I'm Jeremy Devins, and welcome back to the Quiet Mind Astrology podcast. Today, we'll talk about how to do astrology without a birth time and how to rectify a chart in Vedic astrology, what we call rectification. It's basically trying to figure out a birth time when you don't have one from the birth certificate or the mother or the hospital. How do you do astrology without a birth time? And this is very important if you want to know how to decode your birth chart. This is what I teach at Vedic Astrology 101. And you can check it out at quietmindastrology.com/101. That's where I walk you through how to interpret your planets, signs, houses, and nakshatras, and basically condense all of my years of training and experience into one class. So you can save yourself a lot of frustration, a lot of years of confusion, misreading your chart, which I definitely did early on. I misread my own chart. I misread other people's charts. It was embarrassing. I felt shameful. I felt like I could never really get good at this astrology thing for a while there. But I had a great mentor and I had great training and great resources. And I eventually figured it out. And I share the best of everything I figured out. And it blows me away, the people I work with, just even after the 1 2 hour workshop, what they can do. But then through the mentorship program I do, the 6 months, what people can do at the end where they can read any chart on the spot. Super cool. So how do you do that? And especially if you don't have a birth time, well, let's just jump into it. I like to just show you my screen and not waste a lot of your time here and just get right into it. So I'm going to talk about these 6 steps of how to figure out your birth chart without the time. And it starts with narrowing down the moon sign. So I'm just going to give us an example here, just opening up what's called a prajna chart. This is the current moment. And let's just say somebody is born on November 8th, 2024, and we want to look at their chart and we want to be able to interpret it. So we really ideally would want to have the birth time. So we want to start by figuring out what signs could change on that one day. So if I go to the South Indian chart, it's a little easier to see this. This is why I use this for transits. The South Indian chart is more like a visibility of the sky. If you're watching the video, I'm going to show this. If you're not watching the video, I'm going to explain it, so you don't need to see it. But basically, if we go to November 8th, 2024, our potential birthday, and if you have your own chart, you don't know the birth time, or you know somebody without the birth time, just kind of follow along with their date. I'm going to go to midnight and say on this date, I'm just going to move the hours back to where it says 000. And that puts me at midnight. And that's November 8th, 2024 at midnight. So we look at where all the planets are in the chart and we go one day forward to November 9th, 2024, back to November 8th, forward to November 9th. So we see throughout the whole day of November 8th, no planet changes signs. So if somebody is born on November 8th, they are definitely a moon in Capricorn. Now, I say the first step is to narrow down the moon sign because the moon is the most likely to change of any of the grahas. Graha means celestial body, grasping of an energy, of multiple energies. And it's not just a planet, because the moon is not a planet, sun is not a planet. Rahu and Ketu are not planets, but they are grahas. They grasp energy. So nothing changes on this day. Let's just go forward to a different day for an example, right? So if I have somebody born on November 9th and I don't know the time, within the day of November 9th, the moon does move from Capricorn to Aquarius. So I would need to narrow down whether the moon changed signs on that day for them, and then which sign seems more likely. Does this person seem more like a moon in Capricorn or a moon in Aquarius? Now, let's use November 9th because it's a little more challenging and a little more common that you'll see this where you don't know the moon sign. So are they more moon in Capricorn or moon in Aquarius? Well, we start by looking at the qualities of Capricorn and Aquarius. And this comes through knowing the signs, which you might not know as you're listening, but you might know. Capricorn tends to be more structured. It's ruled by Saturn, which represents boundaries, restrictions, limitations, challenges, obstacles, setbacks, governments, father figures, the knee. There's so many things that each graha represents. So I'm just listing some of them. But Moon in Aquarius is kind of similar because it's also ruled by Saturn. And this is the one place in the chart where that happens, where the moon can change to another sign and it's the same ruler of Saturn, because Saturn was Capricorn and Aquarius. But the next sign is Pisces, that's ruled by Jupiter. The next sign is Aries, that's ruled by Mars. The next sign is Taurus, that's Venus. So it makes it a little more challenging, actually, when somebody is on this cusp of Capricorn and Aquarius, and we're not sure which one it is. But Capricorn is more about structure, following the rules, clarifying the rules and systems and order. Aquarius is a bit more about breaking the rules and setting new rules and new directions. And we've seen this as an example throughout this transit of Saturn in Aquarius in 2022 into 2025, of this a lot of changing of structures and rules. AIs having huge breakthroughs, technology, robotics, electric cars, all these things having huge breakthroughs, satellite, internet, Starlink, these kind of things. Saturn and Aquarius, the World Wide Web, even in the 90s, and Saturn was in Aquarius. It's that kind of new innovative energy. Whereas Saturn in Capricorn back in 2020 until 2022 was more about reinforcing structures, reinforcing systems, and more restrictions, delays, setbacks, all these kind of things. That's a Capricorn kind of energy. I should also mention the positive. I'm mentioning a little more the negative of Capricorn, but Capricorn is also like very reliable, grounded, earthy, solid, dependable, trustworthy, safe. It's a very secure energy. Like you want a bank that has a lot of Capricorn energy. You want a law enforcement that has a lot of Capricorn energy. It feels more solid and secure. And it can be a very safe, secure energy. So, all that to say, right? We're just doing step one here for the birth chart rectification is trying to narrow down the moon sign. Is it Capricorn? Is it Aquarius? Are you more about following the rules or creating new rules? Not just breaking the rules. That's more like maybe Scorpio as some of this Pisces, like I don't want to follow the rules. Aquarius is like I'm setting new rules. We're creating a new game, a new system, a new way of approaching things. But it's going to have like a big structural impact. Again, like the World Wide Web in the mid 90s, it's like a totally new way of communicating, of technology, and all these things. So, is this person more in that predisposition to create new systems? And also, Aquarius is quite independent, eccentric, unique, right? So, being able to do this does require that you have a pretty good grasp of the signs, and you can go back to my episodes on the signs if you want a refresher on this. My episode on the houses as well can help. We can't use the houses yet because we don't know the ascendant. So you don't want to start using the houses until we get later into this process. But let's say we're going to narrow down the moon sign and we're just going to say this person is more moon in Aquarius. Also, we get moon conjunct Saturn with that placement. So this person may tend to have more challenges with depression and feeling restricted, a restrictive mother, an oppressive mother, feeling limited by authority figures, right? These are all issues of moon Saturn conjunction. And not to speak of anything else in the chart yet, because we want to focus on this thing that changes first to try to figure out more precision into the chart. We could say Venus and Sag, they're going to be adventurous in relationships. We got that. But let's say we've narrowed it down. Moon is in Aquarius. And now we want to narrow down the range of time this can happen on, we're going with November 9th for this example. So I'm just going to go from November 9th all the way up to when the moon reaches Aquarius. And I should back up here. How did I figure that out? How would I figure that out in talking with somebody? I would just ask them a lot of questions. Are you more this? Are you more that? Or I also try to ask as little bit as minimize the leading questions as much as possible. So rather than say, uh, even not comparing them, but like you might just say, "How is your relationship with structure? How do you feel about following rules? Are you do you consider yourself somebody who follows rules and instructions well? Or do you consider you might you might start asking a little bit more leading, like do you prefer to create new rules or follow the old rules? Do you prefer to be more independent or be part of a system and structure? Right? Just try not to lead too much and try not to uh, get them to say something. You want to be as open-ended and open-minded as possible and try to find what feels most resonant for them. So let's say we have done that process. We asked them questions to narrow down the moon sign. And now we're going to go to time on November 9th when it does change. And that is right about 9:50 a.m. Get more precise here. We'll say it's 9:58 a.m. We're going with the Pacific time on this example. Let's say they're born in Los Angeles. So narrowed on the moon sign, it's 9:58 a.m. to this is going to be the end of the day, or in this case, it's not always that it ends up being the end of the day, but we know it's 9:58 a.m. until midnight. It's going to be in Aquarius. So in that case, we've done that. We've got the moon sign is definitely in Aquarius. So it's going to be there from 9:58 a.m. till midnight. How long does the moon spend in a sign? Well, we can look at it. Say 9:58 a.m. on November 9th until the 10th, and then to the 11th. So it's 2.5 days that the moon is in a sign. So if it's early degrees on that day, we know it's going to be there all day. So in this case, we're going to go back to November 9th, 9:58 a.m. We see that's where moon's at 0 degrees. So we can know that the moon is going to stay in Aquarius all day on November 9th because it's at such low degrees at that point. But now we want to narrow down step 2, narrow down the moon nakshatra. So we start with moon and Dhanishta. And if we go forward through the hours, we get moon in Satabhisha at what time? This is kind of a slow process sometimes, right? So I'm just kind of walking you through it in real time, just like I would if I were needing to do this with a client. And usually we can do this in about 30 minutes, but sometimes it might take up to an hour. So we know the moon is in Satabhisha at 6, or this is at 21:30. So that's 9:30 p.m. And it's in Dhanishta, 9:58 a.m. Before that, right? So then we get to the end of the day now, and we're still in Dhanishta or Satabhisha, excuse me, of course. So we're still in Satabhisha until midnight. So, and this is typically what you'll see, that there's 2 possible moon nakshatras in the day, even if it stayed in the same sign. So if we went back to November 8th and moon was in Capricorn all day, there's still probably going to be 2 possible nakshatras in that day. So ideally, you might hear that they're born in the morning or night, but let's just say we have nothing. And that happens sometimes. You have nothing, no morning, no night. You don't know any time. You just know the day of the birth. So we're going to either be Dhanishta moon or Satabhisha moon. So again, this comes back to knowing the nakshatras. Like you've got to know these things, and I give you all the references in the 101 course. So I lay it all out for you, so you have these keywords. But because you don't have that, I'm just going to share a bit about each one and just how I kind of do this process, and I'll do a little faster this time. So Danishta, the symbol of a drum. Satabasha, the symbol of 100 healers in a circle. Danishta, it's about going with the rhythm of life. There's often a great fortune in their life, but also a great tragedy in their life. Satabasha is about healing and transforming. So is this person going to be more about the sort of going with the flow, the rhythm of life? Danishta also has, it's like a drum is hollow. So these people often have this sensation, this experience of feeling a little bit empty inside. Satabasha has a similar thing. A big circle, 100 healers in a circle has a space inside, but it feels like more of a healing space, more of a uh, less of a hollowness, more of a protection kind of energy, more of the Saturn elements of protection in Satabasha and healing. In Aquarius, it's a bit more eccentric, more of the typical Aquarius things we think of, in Danishta, a bit more of that eccentricity, that unique way of doing things we think of with Aquarius is in Danishta. Satabasha is more like the progressive healer, the hippie in the forest that wants to move outside of society, more eccentric in that way. Danishta, more eccentric, typically like with a lot of wealth and fame, like Marilyn Monroe, the famous example of Muna Danishta that's often used, where, of course, a lot of success, but also tragedy involved there. And don't be scared if you've got Moon Danishta. Don't be worried about some sort of looming tragedy. It doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing. If you have self awareness and you're doing things to work through karma and practices, I think that helps bring out the better side of that. So, all that to say, I'm going to narrow it down by asking them questions. So, Danishta questions might be like, do you consider yourself fortunate? Have you had any major tragedy in your personal life? What are your playlists like? What do people say about playlists that you make? Usually, Danishta people make amazing playlists. Like they find the coolest songs you didn't even know existed. They're awesome DJs and often great musicians as well. Do you have any musical talents? I might ask. Things like this. For Satabasha, I might ask, are you into any sort of healing arts or healing modalities or things like that? And do you have any regular like self-care routines that you do? How do you feel about music festivals? What are your thoughts on patchouli, that fragrance that you often smell at music festivals? Are you into any like psychedelic drugs? Like this is also this kind of moon satabasha, like into like ketamine therapies or psilocybin therapies or ayahuasca retreats or these kind of progressive, unique, eccentric, pushing the boundaries of society kind of experiences in the vein, typically in the realm of like wanting to heal and wanting to help others heal. So those are some of the questions I might ask. And let's just say, for the sake of this example, they said it's more the latter. So we're going to go with Satabasha moon. And they also, because it's Mars and Saturn are even more conjunct there, I might ask questions like, what's your mom like? This will help because the moon represents the mother. So if the mom was more like, she's always dancing and singing and playing music, and that's the Nishta, or the mom like had a tragic affair and whatever, that's more Denisha. Or she's like the mom is more hippie, that's more Satabasha. Or the mom is a doctor or a nurse. It doesn't have to be totally hippie, like could be in some sort of medical field as well. Satabasha has great healing ability. So you do need to know the signs and nakshatra meanings to do this. Again, that's in the 101 course. I give you the keywords, but I'm just laying it out here right now. This is the process. So let's just say we've got it's Satabasha. So we narrowed it down. First step, we narrowed down the moon sign to Aquarius. Second step, we narrowed down the moon nakshatra to Satabasha. And I know I say that differently every time. It's kind of a common thing in Sanskrit. Shatabisha, Satabisha, Shatabisha, they all are okay. Just like Savasana, Shavasana, in yoga, this kind of thing. So step 3, narrow down the ascendant signs. So we've got Satabasha at the end of the day. So we go back to where it starts again. It starts at 9:30 p.m. So what we got? Yeah, 9:30 p.m. It starts moon in Satabasha. This helps us quite a bit. It's not always so easy with the ascendant. So I'm going to go to North Indian chart now. We're going to try to narrow down what are the potential ascendant signs for this chart. Could be Cancer at 9:30 p.m. Could be 1 hour, 2 hours, 1, 2. So it's usually how long is the rising sign present for? About 2.5 hours, right? So the moon is in a sign for about 2.5 days. The rising sign is the rising sign for about 2.5 hours. So when we get to the rising sign, now we're getting more and more precise. So we could be a Leo rising at what is 2350. So that means 1150. So this is a very easy one because we've only got two potential rising signs. There are charts where you might have the whole day. You might have every potential rising sign. So it takes longer and it's more challenging and you got to start using some intuition. So that is more challenging, I'll say. But so we just got Cancer or Leo. So now we look at the Cancer and Leo qualities. Are you more this? Are you more that? And again, try not to lead too much. So I would say questions like, how do people describe you in general, your personality, first house? Look at their body. Are they somebody who looks like they get all dolled up? They want to be like a princess or a prince. Like that's more Leo kind of energy, more royalty, king or queen kind of energy. Like they might wear like royal colors, purple and gold. They might have like a sort of big, beautiful presence, like have big hair or a fancy jewelry. There's just sort of an opulence about the Leo presentation that's bigger, more bold. The Cancer sort of appearance, the first house, the appearance is typically gentler, softer, sweeter, and less of this bold kind of energy. And Cancers might be more comfortable to wear more casual clothes. Leos might want to wear things that really make them look good and like suits, dresses, things that stand out more. So you might see that in the appearance, the first house. The first house is also the head. It's what's happening in the head. So it's kind of similar to the moon in that way. It's like how they're thinking. And with Cancer people, they might be thinking in a way that's more empathetic, more compassionate, more kind, more sympathetic. Leo people might be thinking in a way that's more about themselves, prioritizing themselves. Could be self-centered, could be arrogant, egotistical, could also be just self-preserving. And there may be, a good reason why they are this way, where they needed to learn to take care of themselves or preserve themselves or survive in some way. And the Cancer person might be on their negative side more emotional, highly moody, mood swings, and uh, emotional in a way that might be inappropriate to a situation, like crying in line at the grocery store. It's that they might be actually okay with that, but others might like maybe their partner feels uncomfortable with them or something like this. So easier access to the emotions for the Cancer person, and they might have like this deeper access to the emotions that needs to express more regularly, even at times that might seem inappropriate. But there's again, they might be working through some very deep stuff there. So you narrow it down to questions like this. And let's just say we narrowed it down and they're a Leo ascendant and they take pride in themselves. They have a lot of confidence. They want to be seen. They naturally are leaders. Cancers naturally want to support more. Leos want to lead more and be supported. So let's just say it's Leo. They're born at between 11:50 and midnight now. So That again just makes it very easy because we only got 10 minutes of ascendant nakshatras to look at. And that means that, well, it almost changes. Let's see. All right. So in that 10 minutes, it stays as Maga ascendant. So that makes it very easy. But if we went with Cancer, it could have been Aslesha, it could have been Pushya. Yeah. So if we went with Cancer, there's more possibilities there. And we go back to 9:30 p.m. There we see the Punarvasu. Right. So Punarvasu is at the beginning of Cancer. So if it was a Cancer, then we would need to narrow down between those three. Was it Punarvasu? Was it Pushya? Was it the Aslesha? And each of those is pretty distinct energies, and you need to know and understand them to be able to ask questions. And again, it's all in the 101 course. So I laid out for you the keywords, what things you would ask about and look for. But again, to keep it simple today, we'll go with that. It was the Leo ascendant. Let's say they're just born at 11:50. Well, we almost got it. So we're going to do step 5 first. So because of this being so narrow, then we know step 4 is we know the ascendant nakshatra is Maga. Maga tends to prioritize family values, ancestry. They're into like their family tree, their DNA, following in the family footsteps, supporting the family, connecting to the family. Very close, probably with the father, depending on the dignity of the father, the son, and the ninth house. But Sun rules Leo, so they're likely a very significant relationship with the father. And this person tends to actually happens to actually have Moon and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius. Like I said, that could be a more oppressive mother, uh, more of a restrictive kind of energy there. Saturn, slow, heavy, dense. The Moon wants to keep moving, but Saturn wants to slow down. So that's uh, a point of contention there, the mother relationship. So we've got it narrowed down. These first 4 steps down, we narrowed down the moon sign, the moon nakshatra, the ascendant sign, and the ascendant nakshatra. We're doing good. This is awesome astrologizing here. We've narrowed down from a whole day down to 10 minutes. So now we can look at the transits and dashas. This is where if we need to get more specific, we use the transits and dashas. So in this case, within that 10-minute range, we've narrowed it down so much, which isn't always the case. Sometimes it's a bit harder than this. If we go forward 10 minutes, that doesn't change much in the dashas. So I'm looking at the bottom right corner. They're born in the Rahu dasha, the Rahu mahadasha, and then the Rahu subdasha, and then the Venus subdasha. And if I go just that 10-minute span we're working with, it stays in those 3 layers. And those first 3 layers are by far the most important. And if I just go back and forth between these 10-minute windows, not too much changes. The D9 changes there. They go from an Aries ascendant in the D9 to a Taurus ascendant in the D9. Nothing changes in the transits there in the 10-minute window. So that's the last thing I would refine here. It's all the way up to the last 2 minutes of November 9th of this day that they end up being a Taurus ascendant in the D9. And that would change their sort of trajectory in life. The D9 is your evolution in life. It's what you grow towards. It's how you evolve. Are they growing towards more Aries, more need to be independent? I got to do my own thing. Or are they growing more towards Taurus? I need to focus on family and connection and more interested in things like my diet and food and cooking and enjoying life and the pleasure of life more. And it's a lot of critica too. So they become more critical. They become more interested in food and cooking and like precision in detail of things like their food, their environment, nature, the garden, interior design, jewelry, fashion, makeup, these kind of things are more critica focused kind of things, versus if it was the Aries, they've got all this Barney energy. So they're more interested in like women's health issues, potentially OBGYN or things like a midwife or a doula, these kind of realms, issues related to birth and death, like working in a funeral home, mortician, transformational things, extremes as well. All right. So they might be tending, this is how they evolve in life. So you see this stuff more expressed by like the mid 30s, but it's always how they're evolving in life. It might happen slower, it might happen faster. Might see it in the 20s, you might see it in the 40s or 50s. But this is kind of how they're evolving. So depending on the age of the client, this D9 refinement might be necessary, might not be necessary. And then the final step of 6 here is you just test it over time. So, okay, so we went with this. It's the moon in Satabhasha, ascendant in Maga. The D9 is ascendant in Bharani. Watch how it plays out. And this is something you can't really do if it's just for a reading, but if it's for a friend, family member, or yourself, see if that resonates over time. Am I more family oriented with the Maga ascendant? Am I interested in my family tree and ancestry and DNA? Or is that just like not really interesting to me? So that's our look at that. And then briefly, I want to touch on the transits for this week. So we've got really this week from November 9th, the only big transit is Mercury moving into Jesta. So Mercury is going to go retrograde too. So Jesta is about transformation. It's a Mercury ruled nakshatra. So it's an opportunity to go into deep spiritual studies, into the occult, mystical teachings in Jesta. It's very transformative energy. Studying astrology, yoga, transformative work, personal growth work, very favorable during this transit. And we're going to need to go back over some old traditions, old things that we've learned in the past and heal some stuff. Jesta is one of the sort of movers of transmuting energy. If you have a native in your chart, it's a powerful energy. Like these people make incredible healers, astrologers, tarot readers, yogis, yoga teachers. So when Mercury's there, it's like a great time to learn about this stuff, to learn how to better transmute energy in your life. Things like sexual transmutation, all the way back to books like Think and Grow Rich talk about this, or more recently, sort of more recently, things like the Mary Magdalene books, the Magdalene manuscript. This book comes up a lot when I talk with women about like sort of esoteric hidden teachings of the Christian path, where Mary Magdalene was highly influential on Jesus in this tradition. And it's become more and more popular. I learned about this a long time ago from a very wise woman. But this is a great book. If you've never read the Magdalene manuscript, it talks a lot about things like transmuting energy, particularly with the sexual energy, which is very powerful, the power to create life. But just in general, like embracing and embodying and owning that transmutive power of the feminine, also the union of masculine and feminine, and the deeper stuff, which is just as all about. So that's the big thing happening this week, and it's actually extending out because of the retrograde. So it's about a month of that kind of energy. And then next week, we'll have the full moon in Kritika in Aries, a time of celebration and completion on Friday, November 15th. Also, Saturn will go direct in Aquarius on that day, and the sun will move into Scorpio. So that's a big turning point in the month, November 15th, to go again into deeper transformational work and a time to celebrate. I know somebody getting married at that time. It's a great time for this kind of thing, like celebration, completion of a cycle, and moving forward in a new path with Saturn direct and new structure and foundation in your life. So I'll talk more about that next week on the podcast, but that's the short version for now. If you enjoy the podcast, you want to go deeper with me into your Giesta kind of energy, into your transformational work, go to quietmindastrology.com/101 and join the Vedic Astrology 101 course with me. You get access to all past and future live workshops. Each time I emphasize things a little bit differently, so you gain something every time you do it. Get something out of it every time. And it's super fun to share. It's one of my most popular offerings. I always get amazing feedback on it, and it's a great time to join. If you catch this now, there's a live workshop tomorrow happening. But if you catch it in the future, you can catch the next live workshop as well, get all the on-demand training. Tons of value in there. There's also a training on how to look at celebrity charts or public figures and how to do some deeper research as well. So lots of cool stuff in there. quietmindastrology.com/101. And thank you for listening. Look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology podcast.